Journal live at 7 Eastern Sunday morning. Join the discussion.
The candidates for Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District, Democrat Randy Bryce and Republican Bryan Steil, faced off in a debate in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. This debate is an hour.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.
Well, welcome to the City of Oak Creek. We're really thrilled to have you all here. This week, the city celebrated 3 years in our new Civic Center in the heart of Drexel Town Square. We are excited to be able to host regional events like this in our community. My name is Catherine Reske, and I'm the City Clerk of Oak Creek. The Clerk's office is busy preparing for the upcoming general election and will begin early in-person voting Monday, October 22nd here at City Hall, and will conclude November 2nd. We expect many residents to take advantage of this opportunity. Historically, the city will produce a 70% turnout for the gubernatorial election, with 29% of voters voting early. I have the pleasure this evening of introducing the President and CEO of Wisconsin I. Please join me in welcoming Mr. John Henkes.
Good evening, everyone. A few opening comments prior to the main event. We are grateful for this opportunity to present the voters of the 1st Congressional District the two major party candidates in what has become a race of extremely high importance and interest. FYI, Wisconsin I is the nation's first and only independent, non-government funded, non-government controlled state capital network. We're very proud of the fact that we do this differently than all of the other state level C-SPANs in the country. That independence allows us to do events like this without having to worry about what our bosses might say. So we're grateful for that independence. In a few words, this is our mission: to encourage informed civic participation across generations throughout Wisconsin. I want to thank Oak Creek Mayor Dave Bakevich. Dan, that will be the evening's only error, including the Brewers. There will be no errors tonight. And Catherine has just been wonderful in helping us to put all the details together, working with our staff and our lead guy, Matt Peters. I want to just talk for a moment about how we make this all possible. We have 5 very generous sponsors that have stood with Wisconsin I during this campaign season. Each of them, and I'm not bashful in saying this, writing checks to this nonprofit in the amount of $25,000 each to afford us to go all around the state to interview nearly 300 candidates in every legislative, congressional, and statewide race. As our commitment to you, the voters, those resources are freely available. It's a wonderful wealth of information about every candidate in every race. So those 5 sponsors in alphabetical order: AARP Wisconsin, Marshfield Clinic Health System, the Wisconsin Counties Association, the Wisconsin Hospital Association, and the Wisconsin Realtors Association. With that, I'd like to introduce our 2 panelists for the evening. Steve Walters is senior producer at Wisconsin I. Steve has earned through the decades the reputation of highly respected political journalist. He has served previously as State Capitol Bureau Chief for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and he is the only individual journalist to be named Journalist of the Year by the Milwaukee Press Club, a prestigious award that and distinction that for years has always been bestowed upon a media organization and never an individual until Steve. Mary Spicuzza is a veteran political journalist with the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, covering greater Milwaukee politics and breaking news. She previously covered the state capitol for the Wisconsin State Journal and was a member of the reporting team that was a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting. With that, I will turn the program over to Steve and Mary, and we thank you all.
And that's much too much about us because you're here for the debate, and we really appreciate it. I just want to talk about some rules, and Mary's going to give the bios of the candidates as we welcome them. First of all, the candidates will be giving 3-minute opening statements. That's been determined by the proverbial coin toss. Then Mary and I will be asking questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to a question with 1-minute rebuttals going back and forth. When we get to about 8:23, we'll ask each candidate to give a 3-minute closing statement. Now, just some rules on decorum. Please silence your cell phone, as I just did. Thank you. And we want to thunderously welcome the candidates when they enter and when they leave. I want to thank the presence of Oak Creek police officers who have asked me to say any protests. If you're the first occasion, you'll be asked to sit down. The second occasion, you'll be asked to leave. That comes from our respected law officers. And with that, Mary, the bios.
Bryan Steil is an attorney for a manufacturing company. He's also a UW Regent and a former staffer for House Speaker Paul Ryan. He's a Republican from Janesville. Randy Bryce is a union iron worker, U.S. Army veteran, and cancer survivor. He is running as a Democrat and lives in Racine County. We're going to take our seats and welcome each candidate individually. Please welcome Bryan Steil. And please welcome Randy Bryce.
Thank you very much. I was right about that thunderous applause for both you candidates, so thank you very much. The coin toss has determined that the 3-minute opening statement. Mr. Bryce, please.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mary, for being here. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, everybody else, for showing up. As you're aware, for the past 4 weeks, Paul Ryan's Super PAC has spent millions and millions of dollars on nasty, horrible ads attacking me. Bryan, these ads are breaking my mom's heart. My son has to see these before he goes to sleep at night. He's asked about them every day at school. Tonight, you're not going to be able to hide behind millions of dollars worth of attack ads. We're going to have people that are going to have questions answered. Game on.
Please, I just want to remind the audience that that could cut into your candidate's time. Mr. Steil, your opening statement.
First off, I'd like to thank the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Wisconsin Eye, for organizing tonight's debate. I'd like to thank everyone here in the audience and those listening at home and watching on TV. I think what we're going to hear tonight is a real contrast of ideas between my opponent and I and what direction we want to take this country. My background, solving problems, working in manufacturing and education. For the last 10 years, I've worked for local Rock County manufacturing companies. Every day in a manufacturing situation, you're solving problems. You're bringing product in the door, you're manufacturing it, you're shipping it out of the door. You got to do it on time. You got to do it under budget. You got to do it every time. I think there's a real opportunity to take that private sector background and apply it to Washington to get more done on behalf of the American people. I also serve on the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents. I was appointed by Governor Walker and confirmed unanimously in the state Senate, Democrats and Republicans alike. Let me repeat that. Confirmed in the state Senate, Democrats and Republicans alike. Because I bring a problem-solving approach. If you take everything we've done on the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents for my whole tenure, Tuition has been held flat, dollar for dollar. So if you go or you have a student that goes to a University of Wisconsin school, University of Wisconsin Whitewater, University of Wisconsin Parkside, University of Wisconsin Milwaukee, your tuition has been flat, dollar for dollar, for the last 6 years. The reason that's important is because it allows education to be affordable and accessible so individuals can take advantage of new jobs and new opportunities that are coming to Southeast Wisconsin. I think tonight you're going to hear a robust conversation of ideas. You're going to hear a real contrast of ideas. Does the answer to our problems, does it reside in Washington, D.C., or does it reside here locally? I believe it's the latter. My opponent supports a $32 trillion government takeover of healthcare. Just to conceptualize the cost to pay for that one program alone, you'd have to double all income and business taxes just to pay for that one program alone. I believe we need to lower the cost of healthcare by putting patients and doctors at the center of the decision-making process. My opponent supports raising taxes. I believe you should have more money here in your pocketbook in Southeast Wisconsin. My opponent supports abolishing ICE. It would make our communities less safe. I stand with the men and women of law enforcement. I'm proud to have the endorsement of all 6 sheriffs, Democrats and Republicans alike, from all 6 counties from the 1st Congressional District. The list goes on. I think it's going to be a robust conversation of the direction that we're going to take our country, and I look forward to that conversation tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Steil. Mary, you have the first question.
The national debate on health care seems largely focused on 2 opposite strategies: repeal the Affordable Care Act or focus on Medicare for all. What is your position? And that'll be Bryan.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Healthcare and how we lower the costs is at the center of one of our most important issues in this country. To lower the cost of healthcare, we need to put patients and doctors at the center of the decision-making process. In particular, that goes as we look at Medicare. We need to protect Medicare for seniors. We also need to protect Social Security. Those are promises we made to the generation in retirement and those approaching retirement. Medicare is a promise we made, and it's a promise that we need to keep. As it relates to healthcare costs in general, I think there's a real clear contrast. My opponent supports a $32 trillion government takeover of healthcare. Again, to conceptualize what that would cost, just to pay for that one program alone, you would have to double, I'm going to repeat that, you'd have to double all income and business taxes just to pay for that one program. It would make most private insurance illegal. If you remember that promise that you can, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, you can keep your doctor. This is the opposite of that. This says the government will take over your healthcare decisions. Again, it's a real clear contrast. Is the answer to our healthcare problems, is it in Washington, D.C., or is it here locally, between patients and doctors, to lower the cost of healthcare? That's what we need to do.
Mr. Bryce.
Great question, thank you. We recently had a study done by the Koch brothers, you know who they are, that said that Medicare for All is actually going to save us $10 trillion save us $2 trillion over 10 years. Not my study, not a liberal study. The Koch brothers put the study out that said we could save that amount of money. Healthcare is a very personal issue for me. It's the main reason why I got in this race. Even though I was working full-time jobs, I didn't have insurance, and it was a time when I was diagnosed with cancer. I can tell you, it's not a place anybody wants to be. To be diagnosed with a debilitating disease that ended up bankrupting me after I was done. Every other country, industrialized country, has some version of universal health care. Why don't we? I can tell you why, because it hasn't been a priority. But do people deserve it? Absolutely we do. Not only that, but if we have something in place like Medicare for All, it's going to help somebody that wants to start a small business. They're not going to have to worry about hiring an administrator, which right now, and ironworkers are self-insured. We have to pay an administrator basically to turn down our own members' claims. There's enough to go around. The only thing, we just can't keep giving $1.5 trillion to the billionaires in this country. Talking about spending tens of billions of dollars on a wall when we have hungry kids going to sleep that can't see a doctor. That's not right. I am in favor of Medicare for All because it's something that everybody is so deserving of. We're worth it, and we can't do anything else unless we are healthy.
Do you want a short rebuttal, Mr. Steil?
Yeah, I look at Obamacare, and what it did is it made healthcare less affordable and thus less accessible. As the cost of healthcare goes up, that healthcare becomes less affordable and thus less accessible to hardworking families right here in Southeast Wisconsin. What we need to do is drive down the cost of healthcare. You do that by putting a patient and doctor-centered approach. You can also address the disaster of Obamacare while still protecting pre-existing conditions. I've been clear since day one. We need to protect individuals with pre-existing conditions, but we also need to look as to how we lower the cost of health care. My opponent's plan is a $32 trillion program with no options as to how to pay for it. To pay for that, you would have to double all income and business taxes just to pay for that one program alone.
Any answer? Mr. Bryce?
Yes.
30 seconds, please.
One of the things I've noticed is that all these Republicans that have been saying we want to repeal Obamacare and get rid of it are now saying we want to save the pre-existing conditions. Or even seeing Governor Walker talk about that. Bryan, I haven't heard you come out and ask Governor Walker to stop this lawsuit that Brad Schimmel has going to take it away, to remove pre-existing conditions for people in the state of Wisconsin. If you can't stand up to Governor Walker and ask him now, how in the heck are you going to go stand up to Donald Trump in Washington, D.C.?
You want a very short answer, and then so move on? Okay. Question number 2. Mr. Bryce, earlier this week, President Trump threatened to use the military to close the border. What do you think should be done to address our country's immigration problems? Please provide specifics on issues like family separations at the border, paths to citizenship for Dreamers, and ICE. Please, sir.
Well, I mean, right now, the Republicans, Donald Trump's method is by separating kids, putting them in dog cages. That's not family values to me. That's not why I put on a uniform and served this country. It's not having families separated. This country was built on the backs of immigrants. We deserve to allow people entry here. We have people now that have been here that don't know any other country. Right after the presidential election, I was called frantically from Voces de la Frontera, which is an immigrant rights group. And they asked me if I would start attending their emergency meetings. I did. I'll never forget the faces, specifically 2 young women, high schools, that were talking about, in tears. They would get up there. They don't know if they're going to be able to finish school or if somebody from ICE is going to come take them out. Or even if they were able to finish school, get home and find out that their door had been kicked in and their dad had been removed and deported. ICE has been in the area. 83 people were removed a couple weekends ago. They didn't do it. They didn't coordinate with local law enforcement agencies as they're supposed to. I can't see tearing families apart. You know, and we're talking again, tens of billions of dollars for a wall that can be defeated by a $45 ladder. That doesn't make sense. We need to enact a Clean Dream Act, not just that, but enact a DAPA so that the parents can stay here. People that are here, that have been there their entire lives, brought here through no choice of their own, they don't even speak the language of their home country. This is their home right now. We need to find a way to get them documentation. They are contributing to society now. Let's let them continue. Let's let them come out of hiding and join the rest of the community so they're not afraid to call the police when they see a crime being committed.
Mr. Steil?
Our immigration system's broken. We've been let down by Democrats and Republicans alike. I think we need to address the problem with a little bit of a problem-solving hat on. I look at immigration, step 1, we need to secure the border. We need to properly fund that. The wall is a key component of that. We need to do that for multiple reasons. One of them being, I was speaking with the law enforcement community in Racine and Kenosha recently about drugs being trafficked across. I think the contrast to my opponent here is pretty clear. He wants to abolish ICE. That'd make our communities less safe. The men and women of ICE are on the front lines as it relates to immigration, but also in particular terrorism, drug trafficking, and human trafficking. As you look at the I-94 corridor, as drugs and admittedly humans are being trafficked from Chicago to Milwaukee and sparting out into our communities, Racine, Kenosha, Franklin, Oak Creek. This is at the forefront. Those policies make our communities less safe, not more safe. I believe that's why I've earned the endorsement of all 6 sheriffs, Democrats and Republicans alike, because my policies make our communities more safe. My opponent's policies make our communities less safe. As it relates to the legal immigration system, we need to address that problem as well. Our legal immigration system's broken. We need to put a legal immigration system in that addresses, in particular, our workforce needs. As it relates to individuals with DACA, after we've secured the border, they need to have an option to come right with the law. You know, we are a nation of immigrants. I was recently with 2 men, Hector and Michael, who own a restaurant in Rock County just outside Beloit. They escaped from Albania under communism rule and risked their lives to cross the border out of Albania. And they applied for asylum and came to the United States. They're spectacular individuals. They're living the American dream. We need a legal immigration system that makes sense so more people like Michael and Hector can come to the United States and live the American dream and do that legally.
Any rebuttal, Mr. Bryce?
Yes. it seems that Bryan has an issue understanding exactly what ICE does. He mentioned drugs, terrorism, human trafficking. Well, we have agencies that take care of those things. The DEA takes care of drugs. The FBI takes care of terrorism. And right now, ICE is bigger than the FBI. Also, when it comes to human trafficking, I don't know what the heck you consider separating kids from their parents so that they can't ever be reunited, only to adopt them out to an American family. That's a form of human trafficking, if you ask me.
Any answer or move on?
Move on.
Move on? Okay. Mary, you have the next question for
I do.
Mr. Steil.
Congress is bogged down in partisanship and dysfunction. Campaigns have degenerated into bitter personal attacks. Do you think these attacks are fair game, or are they contributing to the dysfunction in D.C.? And Bryan, you're first.
I think we have a lot that's broken right now in our political system, where people go and fight with words, and rather than have a conversation of ideas. I think that's part of what's good about what we're doing tonight. We're having a conversation about the direction from a policy perspective of what direction we want to take our country. I think my background, working, manufacturing, solving problems every day, is the right background for the task. I was appointed to the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents. I was confirmed unanimously in the state Senate, Democrats and Republicans alike, because I bring a problem-solving approach. It's the same approach I'll bring to Washington. I think back to the Walker recall protests that occurred in Madison, all the dysfunction and craziness that went on. Randy Bryce was one of the leaders of those protests. What got accomplished? Absolutely nothing. What was accomplished? Absolutely nothing. We need to see people who go there with a problem-solving approach, who want to work to solve problems, not people that want to take a wrench and throw it into the wheel of government. My background in manufacturing on the private sector side, if a line goes down in a factory, you pull together a diverse group of people to address the problem. You're not concerned about who gets credit for solving, to figure out how that line gets up. You have a diverse group of people, you pull together, and you say, how are we going to solve this? That's the approach that I want to take to Washington on behalf of the American people.
Mr. Bryce?
Randy.
You're cutting into your candidate's time. Mr. Bryce?
Well, the question was about personal attacks. And as I started off the discussion, it was about millions of dollars of personal attack ads that are coming towards me. One was about what kind of father I was. I recently had my former wife come out and speak out against it. I've never seen a political campaign stoop as low as where the Republicans in the 1st District are going right now. I hear a lot of talk about, I can solve problems. Let me solve this problem. Let's get people together. But I've yet to hear one answer, one solution that's been solved. And I also think we need to point out the fact that we have quite a bit of lack of honesty going on up here. Because I'm proud of what I do for a living, build things as a union iron worker. And I think when I hear about talk of going out and fixing a line, I don't see Bryan Steil as being that guy that actually puts on a tool belt and goes out on the line doing it.
Please.
We do want to give him a chance to talk.
The man makes his living sending people's jobs out of the country. We have good paying jobs. I've been fighting as part of the protests with what happened in Madison. It's for fighting for good paying American jobs here. We're talking good paying jobs in America, not China, not Mexico. People deserve a good job here.
Any rebuttal or move on?
Any rebuttal?
Please.
Do you want to answer?
I think it's a bit ironic that an individual whose ads received 3 Pinocchios from the Washington Post for being dishonest then claims frustration with dishonest ads. I've never heard one complaint about an ad that I've run. I've run positive ads. I'm running positive ads on the issues. I'm proud of the ads that I'm running. I'm proud of the campaign I've run. My background's in solving problems, bringing people together to solve problems. That's what we need more of in Washington. We don't need the partisan bickering that we've seen in the past, and that's what we need to stop in Washington.
Next question for Mr. Bryce.
Let me just say that
quickly, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right now, the Republicans are in total control of the government. If they can't get anything done, it's on them. Okay. It's on them.
Okay. And my next question is this: Congressman Paul Ryan represented the 1st District for 20 years. Mr. Bryce, what do you think Mr. Ryan's legacy is and will be, sir?
Well, I'm glad he's going to get the opportunity to spend time with his family after he's done campaigning for this cycle. But what I remember of Paul Ryan is the fact that he had gone around talking about how he wanted to protect Social Security, save it, but he had some form of privatizing it, which would basically amount to a coupon. When somebody got a coupon, once they were out, it was done. They were on their own, left to their own devices. Now, we've asked Bryan Steil if he would commit to to promising not to cut Social Security. Can we count on you not to vote to cut Social Security?
He will get to that
Okay.
maybe in his answer. Go ahead, unless you're finished. Go ahead.
I am.
Okay. Sir.
I look at Paul Ryan, and most importantly, I think of Paul Ryan the person. Great father, great husband, and somebody we are proud to call our congressman. He also was a great listener, great constituent services. If you had a problem with red tape in Washington, D.C., he was the person you could go to. That carried on a tradition from Les Aspin to Paul Ryan. I think it's someone we were proud of to call our congressman here in southeast Wisconsin. I think everybody brings something unique to the table themselves. I think I bring my own personal background. My background for the last 10 years, I've worked for local Rock County manufacturing companies, working to solve problems. How do you bring product in the door? How do you manufacture it? How do you get it out of the door? I think I can bring that to the table. I spent the last 2.5 years working on education policy. How do we make our education affordable so it's accessible to individuals who are looking to obtain those jobs of the future? It's jobs that become plentiful. First and foremost, we have a skills gap. We've been working day in and day out on the Board of Regents to solve that problem. I think I can bring those skill sets to the table to help make progress in Washington on behalf of American voters.
Any rebuttal on that, sir?
Yes. Paul Ryan has been the representative of the 1st District for 20 years.
Yes, sir.
In that time, he's proposed that he's a policy wonk and knows how to cut the deficit. The deficit has risen, has doubled under the leadership of Paul Ryan as Speaker of the House. He's failed in the past 20 years what he set out to do. Nobody's taken more of an axe to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the most successful programs in this country's history, than Paul Ryan.
Any rebuttal or next question? Mary?
All right. Social Security is scheduled to pay out more in benefits than it collects in revenues by 2022 and could be bankrupt by 2034. How should the system be saved?
Question.
Mr. Steil.
Mr. Steil.
Thank you very much. Social Security is a promise that we made to seniors. So is Medicare. It's a promise we made to our seniors. Both are promises that we need to keep. Individuals in retirement and approaching retirement age should have their Social Security protected. As we look to generations of my age and younger, we need to have a bipartisan approach to determine how are we going to make Social Security solvent for generations to come. It's personal. My grandfather started working at Wrigley's Gum in Chicago in 1939 before World War II. He took 4 years off to go fight in the war. Wrigley's Gum held his job open. He returned, and he retired in 1983 on his 65th birthday. My grandma is 101. She lives in Chicago. She lives off that Wrigley's pension and off her Social Security payment. Those are promises we made to seniors, Social Security in particular. It's a promise we made to seniors. It's a promise we need to keep to our seniors, those in retirement and those approaching retirement age. It's part of the reason I'm running. I think we have a budget that we need to get under control to make sure that we can match that promise as it relates to seniors with Social Security and Medicare. My opponent's plan, just his health care plan alone, is a $32 trillion program. Conceptually to pay for that, right? That's doubling all income and business taxes just to pay for that one program alone. That would put your Social Security and your Medicare at risk. We need to protect Social Security and Medicare, and we can do that by controlling our federal spending.
Mr. Bryce.
Mr. Bryce.
Well, here's an idea. How about let's not give $1.5 trillion to billionaires, the wealthiest people in the country, and then 1 week later say that we can't afford Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Yeah. It's pretty obvious what's going on. We hear all this talk on the right about wealth redistribution and how they're against it, but when it comes to taking the sweat out of our backs, the middle class, the working people that build and maintain this country, it's okay to keep squeezing us. No place in the country is the middle class disappearing faster than right here in Wisconsin. And it's due to these extreme policies that you see put forth by Governor Walker and these extreme Republicans. It's not your moderate version that we had years back, like under Tommy Thompson. This is an extreme version that is out to gut the middle class and reward those who turn these elections into auctions. I've had enough. We've just had Mitch McConnell even say that we can't afford these things now. Why can't we? It's obvious. Because we're rewarding 83% of these tax cuts are going to the very wealthiest here. Me, I can't even deduct tools now. I can't deduct driving to a job. It's ridiculous. I don't want to tax the middle class, the hardworking people of the middle class. We're not asking you to pay more. But when it comes to millionaire corporate attorneys, I will be asking you more.
Please. Thank you. Any rebuttal or new question?
I think what we hear is a pretty clear contrast, right? Is one, my opponent wants to raise taxes. I believe money is best kept in your pocket right here in southeast Wisconsin.
Please give Mr. Steil a chance.
To answer.
Thank you.
I'll just repeat myself because I think it's an important topic to cover and make sure that it's really clear. There's a contrast here between Randy Bryce and myself. Randy Bryce wants to raise your taxes.
No.
I believe taxes are best kept. That money is best in your pocket right here in southeast Wisconsin. I think the contrast is very clear.
Thank you. Thank you, audience.
Let's hold your applause.
Audience on both sides. Let's move to two questions on foreign policy. Mr. Bryce, there are about 15,000 American soldiers in Afghanistan. Question number one, should we withdraw from Afghanistan? Question number two, today the Saudi American government admitted that the American journalist, Mr. Jamal Khashoggi, was indeed murdered. What should be the penalty imposed on Saudi Arabia for the death of that journalist, sir? Two questions on foreign policy.
Well, the first one, we've had troops, there are people now that are enlisting, 18 years old, that don't know a time in their life when we haven't been at war with Afghanistan. What's our exit strategy? How do we win there? That's what we need to find out. And another thing, too, is once we spend all this money on sending our troops overseas and buying them equipment, we need to take care of them when they come back. I'm a veteran. I know what it's like to wear the uniform. And I know what it's like to get sent overseas and be in some place that I don't recognize as home, doing it on behalf of the country. They deserve to know what constitutes a victory. And as far as the journalist with Saudi Arabia, I found it absolutely disgusting after hearing about that and the possibility that he was murdered, somebody brought a bone saw, to hear what came out of Donald Trump's mouth at a rally yesterday when he's praising a member of Congress, a Republican congressman, for body slamming a reporter. I don't know how you can say that that's okay, but not have an opinion on a Saudi reporter, actually an American resident reporter that was allegedly killed by the Saudis.
Same two questions on foreign policy, Mr. Steil.
I look at foreign policy, and in particular, I look at the most recent federal appropriations and think that we finally have properly started to fund our military again. Under the previous administration and under the policies of Nancy Pelosi, under the policies of the previous administration, under Nancy Pelosi and the policies supported by Randy Bryce, we won't have a strong military. The military had previously been hollowed out. We need to properly fund the military, in large part because we need to negotiate peace through strength. What we've seen most recently is significant foreign policy gains. We have ISIS on the run. They're in a small amount of territory now. We're negotiating from a position of strength when it relates to Iran, North Korea. As it relates specifically to Afghanistan, I look at Afghanistan, we need to listen to our generals. We need to transition that force to Afghan peacekeepers. We need to do that in alliance with our allies and NATO allies on the ground. As it relates to Saudi Arabia, in particular, we need to have a thorough investigation. That's a really serious allegation and crime that was purported to have occurred. That needs to be investigated and needs to be dealt with accordingly.
In response, Mr. Bryce?
Yeah, as far as foreign policy, I just find it ironic that Donald Trump tore up the agreement that we had with Iran and wanted to go impose the very same thing with North Korea, try to get them to agree to some kind of arrangement. That just makes no sense to me. Again, I am a veteran. I understand what troops need. I understand what kind of equipment they need. And I know what it's like to actually feel to be sent someplace and to wonder, do we have everything that we need? I don't need to be lectured on the military or strength of our military.
What do you think should be done to prevent gun violence, such as the mass shootings we've seen at schools like Parkland, workplaces, and other locations around the country? And Mr. Steil, you're first.
The gun violence is a really serious issue in this country. We've seen it here in Oak Creek, and you have a real respect for the men and women of law enforcement who arrived on the scene and prevented a tragic situation from possibly becoming worse. You see the same situation in Middleton. You have a real respect for the men and women of law enforcement. I look at that epidemic, and first and foremost, we need to enforce the laws that are on the books. There was a series of shootings in Chicago this summer. Roughly 87 people were shot. As of a few weeks ago, how many were arrested? 2. That's abysmal. We need to enforce the laws that are on the books. We need to make sure that our men and women of law enforcement have the resources needed to be able to put an end to our violent crimes, in particular related to gun crimes. I also talk to the men and women of the law enforcement community, and I hear them talk a lot about enforcing the laws, but I also hear them talk a lot about the tone with which we talk about men and women in the law enforcement community. They're on the front lines protecting our lives. We owe great debt of gratitude. And the words that Randy Bryce has used to describe law enforcement officers, he compared law enforcement officers, your words, not mine, to terrorists. He compared law enforcement officers to terrorists. I give you an opportunity tonight to apologize to the men and women of our law enforcement community for comparing them to terrorists.
Please hold your applause till the end so they can talk, please.
Please, your answer, Mr. Bryce?
Well, what happened when it was referred to a tweet that happened several years ago was right after the Republicans referred to the people that were protesting as terrorists. I was standing up for a disabled veteran who had been roughed up by the Capitol Police. I'm going to call anybody out, whether you're my neighbor, whether you're a police officer, whether you're president of the United States, if you're going to do something wrong. I don't think the police are terrorists. My father is a retired police officer. I served as a military police officer in the Army. So if you're trying to claim that twist something around to make it sound like I have a problem with law enforcement, I don't. All right? When it comes to gun reform, I have a son who attends middle school. I'm not going to buy him a bulletproof backpack. You know, thoughts and prayers, which is the Republican answer to this, isn't going to save him. We just had 2 fathers come whose kids were killed, murdered at Parkland, Florida, who showed up at our headquarters earlier this week. The reason they showed up was because there hasn't been a school shooting in Racine, but they wanted us to make us aware it could. They went to, I think it was someplace in Ohio that they had a meeting, and they warned that they had the same message. They were warning people there. Right after they left, it happened. We need common sense gun reform. We need to get rid of bump stocks. I heard Donald Trump say he was going to get rid of them a long time ago. No action on that. Also, we need to make sure that people have background checks. I don't think it's asking too much. Common sense, let's take a couple of steps, because we have kids stepping up and saying that as parents, you're doing a horrible job protecting us. We're getting mowed down in our schools. It's time to stop. Just going with the laws we have on the books, this is the only country that this happens in, with the laws that we currently have. We need to step up for our kids.
Please hold your applause until the end. Mr. Steil,
We'll agree we need to step up for our kids. I think the approach is different. I think we need to enforce the gun laws that are on the books, and I think we need to have a proper tone as it relates to the men and women of the law enforcement community.
Next question from Mr. Bryce. Will the president's new trade agreement with Canada and Mexico be good for Wisconsin farmers and other Wisconsin exporters? And do you support the president's tariffs on Chinese imports, sir?
The new agreement that was made up with Canada and Mexico has yet to be seen how strong the enforcement is going to be of it, what they're going to value. There's a potential to have some good labor issues that are going to be beneficial for the workers on all sides of the border. Potential is there, but whether or how it's going to be implemented, I'll still wait for a final decision on that. As far as the tariffs, they could be a useful method for achieving the desired effects. But the way Donald Trump's doing it, it's just a blanket tariff on everything. He's alienating people that we have traditionally traded with over decades, who have had our backs in time of war. And there's no long-term, well-thought-out strategy for how these are going to affect us. Right now, we even have Republicans stating that it's going to cause permanent damage to the state. When we have a cornerstone of Wisconsin's economy, Harley-Davidson, talking about moving jobs out because of it, that's a problem. That's a problem. Or we're talking about beer manufacturers, the cost of aluminum going up. Or farmers. What kind of policy does it say that we have? It's kind of crazy right now. We're borrowing money from China, but we're paying that back at interest. And we're giving that to our farmers to subsidize them for not selling anything. That's crazy. That's a crazy economic policy. And we can do so much better. We need to sit back. Let's talk about these issues with the people that it's actually going to affect, those who are doing the work. Let's get them involved, and let's find out a good, long-term, intelligent solution.
Mr. Steil.
Trade in particular, what the president's doing is bringing people back to the table. So he's bringing countries back to the table to have a negotiation to say, how are we ultimately going to get trade deals that are in the best interest of American workers and American farmers? And we're starting to make progress. And so I look at NAFTA in particular, you look at Canada. When I started this campaign, I went to a dairy breakfast and was speaking with local dairy farmers in Rock County, talking about the struggles that dairy farmers face to export milk from Wisconsin to Canada. Canada has had a convoluted milk pricing scheme for the duration of NAFTA. This trade deal makes it a much better deal for American dairy farmers, in particular Wisconsin dairy farmers, to be able to export their milk from Wisconsin to Canada. That's a significant step in the right direction. What we've done is brought a lot of countries back to the table. Now what we need to do is move quickly to the next phase so that we're ultimately able to lower the barriers for trade. The reason you need to do that is so workers and farmers here in southeast Wisconsin can ship their products around the globe. We have the best workforce, not just in the United States. We have the best workforce in the entire world right here in southeast Wisconsin. We have hard workers, people who want to show up on time and want to go to work. What we need to do is make sure we have trade policies that allow our workers and our farmers to ship their products around the globe and to take the benefit of all the hard work we do right here.
Any
Yeah,
follow-up,
it just blows my mind, again, listening to a corporate attorney who helps outsource jobs from Wisconsin to other countries talk about good-paying jobs here. Again, we're talking good-paying jobs in the United States.
Thank you. Mary?
Did you want to?
I just find it a bit ironic how much you harp on the word attorney. I can think of at least 9 times where a law degree would have come in really handy.
Look.
Please hold your applause until the end.
Next question, Mary.
Okay. Did you want to brief?
Well, yeah,
brief
I
answer?
mean, if being an attorney, you would think that one would be able to determine arrests versus convictions. Those numbers are two completely different. And also, if you turn in the fact that my recent arrests have been standing up for people, for whether it was Dreamers or having a peaceful sit-in in Ron Johnson's, just outside of his office, asking him what he's going to do to provide American jobs after he voted against Obama's Jobs Act. So yeah, I'll continue to stand up. John Lewis, I don't hear him getting a lot of grief for standing up for people. You know, and if an opportunity comes up to stand up in peaceful protest, you bet your backside I'm going to be right there.
Thank you.
Please hold your applause.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you.
Mary, you have the next question.
Would privatizing the medical care of veterans improve their care?
I think Veterans Choice is a really positive step. It allows our veterans to take their health care dollars and to find care that's near them. So when I talk to veterans, in particular, as we look at mental health and we look at the suicide numbers facing our veterans community, the ability for those veterans to have the option to take those health care dollars to a facility near them is a really positive step in the right direction, rather than having an arbitrary 40-mile radius around your home to go get care. So I look at how we're addressing that. I think the Veterans Choice Program is a step in the right direction. If given the opportunity to serve in Congress, one of the first things I'll do is assign a full-time staff member to making sure our veterans are able to receive the care and benefits that they've earned. I think that's paramount. That's first and foremost. There's men and women who've worn the United States military uniform who've earned our greatest respect. They've also earned the benefits that go along with that. We need to make sure that our veterans are able to access those benefits, and allowing the Choice Program allows those veterans to get that care closer to home is an option. I think that's a positive step in the right direction.
Mr. Bryce?
I don't see privatizing as the answer. When we privatize, as we found out with public education, there's a profit margin, a profit motive that goes into it. There's no way we should be able to profit off of treating our veterans when they come back. You know, the fact is that we spend billions of dollars sending them to war. We can at least afford to take care of them when they come back. You know, and being a veteran myself, I know what it's like to come back and try to find work. You know, one of the first jobs I had was working with homeless veterans. And if it hadn't been for a government grant, I might have been sleeping underneath the bridge with these veterans. So I know exactly firsthand, very clearly, how important it is to take care of our heroes when they come back. You know, if they're here protecting our home and they come back, they don't have some place to sleep themselves, that's a problem. We need to take care of them, not just physically, but mentally. Too many suicides every single day in our country, and it's just uncalled for. Also, being president of the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber of Commerce, one of the things we did 3 years ago was design a program to help veterans when they come out to open up their own small businesses. If that's something they want to do, we help get them the tools and knowledge to open these businesses. And we also put veterans who are recently ETS from the service in touch with other entrepreneurs who want to hire veterans, because we do make such a strong workforce. I'll continue to work on behalf of veterans, and I've seen the worst part of being a veteran and coming home, and I've seen some really good things happen. Back to answer the question, privatizing healthcare is not the answer. We need to fully fund the VA. Right now it's being starved and it's not allowed to do what it was designed to do.
Any follow-up, Mr. Steil, on that issue?
I look in particular when veterans return home to make sure that they have the jobs that they need. I think that's why putting in place economic policies that grow our economy and drive down unemployment and push wages higher is so absolutely critical, so that when the men and women who've served the United States come home, they have an opportunity to step into a good place job. One of the things I announced a coalition of veterans, and I sit down and listen to veterans on a regular basis about what their needs are. And in particular, as it relates to that, I hear a lot about the need for proper credentialing. So when you leave the United States military, if you drive a large truck and you used to go from Kuwait to Baghdad, you clearly should have the credentials to get a CDL in our state without having to go through another step. I'm going to work to make sure that that's the case. And it's about listening to veterans to make sure that they're receiving the benefits that they've earned while serving the United States of America.
New question, Mr. Bryce. We're a few miles away from the proposed Foxconn complex. How will Foxconn, if it invests $10 billion and employs potentially 13,000, impact on the 1st Congressional District, sir?
Well, 1st District used to be a manufacturing center. Then the last years under Paul Ryan, we've seen a GM plant completely closed. It's being torn down now in Janesville. It's heartbreaking every time I drive by it. We have a big empty lot in Kenosha where American Motors used to be. Foxconn coming in, that's $4.5 billion of Wisconsin state taxpayer money. We don't know how we're going to benefit from it. I think the people of Wisconsin at least deserve to know the bottom line. How many jobs? Because when I was talking to Representative Chris Taylor, she said that there's a report that came out that made claims about certain numbers. But she said there's a little asterisk at the very bottom of it that says we cannot confirm these numbers. If it can provide good paying jobs, fantastic, I'm all for it. But we need to know that up front. We also need to keep protections in place. They want to use millions of gallons of water from Lake Michigan. That's less than a mile from where I live. You know, as a youngster, I remember my grandparents taking me over to the lake to go out and swim. If that lake's going to become polluted, I don't know, right now I don't like my son swimming in it. I'll hesitate to go in it myself. The water condition, and we also have air quality conditions. Illinois is already talking about suing us for air quality problems that they foresee. We need to make sure that Foxconn, and this is a company too, they have suicide nets at their headquarters. People killing themselves because of the work conditions, and the CEO has also referred to the workers as animals. If they want to bring that here, they're going to provide good paying jobs, they need to respect our workforce here. Take care of us. We're giving them a lot of money to move here. If they want to be good neighbors, take care of us. That's all that we ask. And the potential is there, but we need to be able to hold them accountable and prove to the Wisconsin taxpayers that are footing the bill.
Mr. Steil, the impact of Foxconn development on the 1st?
I think it's a great testament to the workforce right here in southeast Wisconsin. When I talk to companies that are either here for a long period of time, a Twin Disc that's companies that are expanding, or a company that's new, Herringbow or Foxconn, the reason they're coming here is they want to be as close to the best labor and the best workers anywhere in the globe. That's what we have here in southeast Wisconsin. I think it's terrific companies are coming here. What we're seeing is some of the lowest unemployment rates that we've seen in generations. We're also starting to see the beginning of higher wages. We're starting to see wages start to creep up. That's why you put these policies in place. You want to see wages for the men and women that go to work every day increase. That's why those policies are absolutely critical. I think what we're going to see with the number of job openings that are occurring is how do we address the skills gap? And that's where my work on the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents for the past 2.5 years, I think comes really to the forefront. How do we make sure individuals, men and women, are prepared for the jobs of the future? And we need to make sure that we have affordable, accessible education. And so the work that I've done on the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents, we've held the line on tuition. So we made tuition more affordable to individuals. That's important because we need to make sure that regardless of what zip code you grew up in, you have access to affordable, effective education. That goes all the way down to the Badger Promise. So if you're from a family making less than the median income here in the state, less than $56,000, and your son or daughter gets accepted to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, no small task. What's the cost of your tuition and fees? 0. That's awesome. That's exactly what we should be doing, providing affordable, accessible education to individuals to close that skills gap. That's what I've been working on at the forefront. I think it's a terrific thing we're seeing companies come here. We're going to continue to see tight labor markets, and the beneficiaries of those are the workers right here in southeast Wisconsin, because we need to continue policies that encourage companies to invest so individuals can continue to see low unemployment and increased wages.
Well, I want to stay on Foxconn for a minute. I want to ask Mr. Bryce about something. How do we train the workforce of the future for potential jobs, not only in Foxconn, but the whole workforce training issue, Mr. Bryce? Your thoughts on that, and then I'll give Mr. Steil a chance to follow up.
I made my way into the middle class through an apprenticeship, and that's something that would be fantastic to see more of. It's under attack, though, now by the Republicans with right to work and repealing prevailing wage. It's under attack, but it's the best way to take somebody in off the street that doesn't have a skill. We train them 4 years. When they get back out, they have a career. We have an 800 hotline. You can call up, find out wherever work is, where they need workers, anywhere in the country, even up in Canada. And once you're done, you don't have any college tuition to repay, and it uses 0 taxpayer dollars. It's a fantastic program to get people back to work. It's what I've done for the last 21 years, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done on our infrastructure. I mean, just driving here, hitting all the Scott holes. It's a great paying career, and it's a fantastic way to enter into the middle class. That, in conjunction with working with technical colleges, would be a fantastic way to get people back to work.
A follow-up question on the same subject from Mr. Steil as a member of the Regents. How can the Regents, the 4-year institutions, and now the 2-year are being merged into that, how can the 4-year UW systems and the Voc Techs work together to meet some of our workforce needs, because we all see these now hiring signs everywhere? Sir.
It's a spectacular question, right? How do we prepare the workforce for the jobs of the future? And it's a multi-tiered approach, but most importantly, we need to allow local decision makers to address that need. So what we've seen is under the Department of Education, you have the Higher Learning Commission that credentials schools. So I was having a conversation at Gateway Technical College just a few weeks ago talking about how do we get those technical college classes properly into the high schools, and a lot of that work is the credentialing process. And so the Higher Learning Commission needs to have significantly more flexibility to allow our local school boards, our local Board of Regents to make decisions to be responsive to our hiring and our workforce needs immediately. So I think there's a real opportunity to address the credentialing process under the Department of Education to really make education more flexible and to make sure that individuals are prepared for those jobs of the future.
I think we have time for just one last question before. Okay. The nation's debt has ballooned to $21 trillion. Do you support the president's attempt to lower the annual deficit with a 5% cut in federal programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security? Mr. Steil.
We need to get the debt and deficit under control. It's one of the key reasons why I'm running. What we need to do is we have a spending problem in Washington, and so we need to analyze the spending side of the ledger in Washington. I think to make it clear, though, I want to be very clear. Social Security and Medicare are promises we made to seniors. Those in retirement, approaching retirement age, need to have their Social Security and Medicare protected. I think we can do that and still address a lot of the spending that's going on in Washington. I look at my own background working for manufacturing companies. That's what you do every day in the private sector. Particularly, I look at the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents, where we've seen historically costs go up and up and up. What we did is we came in and we held the line on tuition. I think it's the same approach that we need to take to Washington to get spending under control.
Mr. Bryce.
Sir.
Brian, you didn't answer the question. Do you support the cuts being proposed or not? Okay.
You want to answer?
I'll come back. I'll let you finish.
Okay, go ahead, finish.
The way I see it, this deficit has doubled under the leadership of Paul Ryan. the representative for the 1st District. And it's part of a result of rewarding the richest people in this country for donating to his campaign, paying for the attack ads, the millions of dollars of attack ads that are being run against me, bombarding the TV every time you open your computer up. Let's stop rewarding people. We have $1.5 trillion there to add to the deficit, not keep ballooning it up. The fact is that we're being lied to. We're getting charged more and more. People, the wealthiest people are getting rewarded more and more, and then we're being told, now we have to cut. No, let's stop screwing the middle class, the hardworking people of this country, and let's have the people that are benefiting the most pay a little bit more.
Please hold your applause till the end. Mr. Steil.
I think it's important to reiterate, right? Individuals who are seniors, who've earned their Social Security and their Medicare, who are in retirement or approaching retirement age, should see no cuts.
Well, but I have a follow-up just on that, because just this week, President Trump asked his cabinet secretaries to submit budgets that would spend 5% less. Wouldn't that mean cuts to some of these entitlement programs? Don't you think, Mr. Steil?
Well, I think it's a good exercise to do. So I think that analyzing what programs we can find savings in is an absolutely appropriate analysis. So I don't critique the analysis. I'm making it very clear that I don't support cuts to seniors for Social Security or Medicare that are in retirement or approaching retirement age.
Any follow-up on that before my last question, sir?
Again, more non-answer. It's, do you support cuts or not yes or no. It's a simple. It's a simple.
Okay.
No, it was
that's
conditions.
All right. That's all right. Thank you. We're going to try to moderate here, and I'm going to try to ask at least one last question. I want to come back to healthcare a little bit. Mr. Bryce, Mr. Steil repeatedly said that your Medicare for All plan, and that's my term, and you can correct it, $32 trillion. What's that based on, and do you believe it, that cost estimate, sir?
That is one estimate. But again, there was a Koch brothers study that showed that we're going to save $2 trillion over 10 years if we would put a Medicare for All place in action. Healthcare has become unaffordable for so many people. I'm hearing stories about a lady that goes to talk to her pharmacist. She needs to take 10 prescriptions. Her doctor prescribed 10 meds. She can't afford them all. So she asks the pharmacist, what 2 or 3 can I afford? We're having people that are diabetics that can't afford their insulin. They're stretching it out. You know what this is going to do? It's going to remove premiums. It's going to have everybody able to go see a dentist, to have eye checkups at less cost. You're not going to have a deductible. You're not going to have premiums. And I hear talk about, well, why should we pay for people that don't have insurance? That's why the cost is so high now. It's getting passed on to people when they have a program. They're getting charged more to cover the people that don't. We used to have an emergency room health bill where if you couldn't go see a doctor, you waited till it got bad enough to call an ambulance to take you into the emergency room. Once you got there, they had to see you. Well, if you can't afford to go see a doctor to get a checkup, when they could have found something wrong with you, I mean, in my case, if having cancer, if I could have had a regular checkup, it could have been caught so much earlier. Because I was in my late 20s, I decided to tough it out and hope it would go away. It didn't. It grew into a severe problem. If we can have people go see a doctor, get regular checkups, and don't have to pay premiums or deductibles, we're going to be in a much better place, a much healthier place, and we deserve it.
Mr. Steil, the source of your $32 trillion estimate, sir?
There's a number of sources that are out there. I can provide them to you. I'll put them up on my website tonight with the link. Happy to do it. Happy to give you the source. I'll post it on my website tonight. I'll tweet it out.
Here we go. We're trying to moderate here, and the debate's almost at an end.
But what we've heard was no plan to pay for the program. Yeah. So the plan to pay for the program, so people aren't hoodwinked here, the plan to pay for the program is to raise taxes. And let's conceptualize the size of that tax. Let's just conceptualize it for a moment, right? You can say it saves money here or there. I think what the crux is, it's a $32 trillion program. To pay for a $32 trillion program, you have to double all income and business taxes in the United States of America. That's an incredible increase in the size and scope of the federal government. To me, that's the wrong approach.
Any PS, and then we're going to go to closing remarks. Mr. Bryce.
We're paying 34 now over 10 years. So you do the math. 32 or 34 that we have now?
Okay. Okay, we've reached the point where closing statements. I want to thank both candidates. I'll thank you again at the end of it. Their first closing statement from Mr. Bryce.
Well, I won't take long. I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I know there's a lot going on, a lot of different debates, gubernatorial, Senate. We got the Bucks opening up. But basically what it comes down to is a very simple choice. I'm somebody that's worked my rear end off the last 20 years, literally building Southeast Wisconsin with my bare hands. I've understood the struggles because I've gone through them myself. I know what it's like to get laid off in the middle of winter and wonder where your next paycheck's going to come from. To have my son go to the grocery store with me and be able to look at the bright colored stickers, stuff that's on sale. He knows what it's like to go without when I'm not working. But we still have as much fun as we possibly can. The other alternative is to vote for a millionaire who's also a corporate attorney that he's made his money by sending good paying jobs overseas or to Mexico. That's not the right way. You want somebody that's going to fight for you, that understands what your struggles are? Then I'm humbly asking for your vote in November. We already have over 50% of Congress is made up of millionaires right now. And there's quite a few corporate attorneys already there as well. I'm not having a super PAC pay millions of dollars to run attack ads on my opponent. I'm beholden to the people who donate. 70% of our contributions are from small dollar amounts. 95% of his are from big dollar donors.
Thank you for your closing statement, Mr. Bryce. Closing statement, Mr. Steil.
First of all, I'd like to thank the members of the audience for joining us tonight. I think what we heard is a real contrast in ideas of the direction that we want to take our country. That's the right conversation to be having. So I appreciate the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Wisconsin Eye, and the City of Oak Creek for hosting us here tonight. I think at the core what you heard was, does the answer reside in Washington or does the answer reside here locally? My opponent supports a $32 trillion government takeover of healthcare. To pay for that doubles all your income and your business taxes. He wants to raise your taxes in general. He thinks that your money is best used in Washington. I think your money is best in your pocket here in Southeast Wisconsin. My opponent wants to make our communities less safe. He supports policies like abolishing ICE. I stand with the men and women of the law enforcement community. I think my background, working for local Rock County manufacturing companies and serving on the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents, working to solve problems every day, is the right background to have. I can go to Washington and work to solve the problems that are facing us right here in Southeast Wisconsin. At the end of this election, in 18 days, you're going to have a choice. I think the choice is really clear. And I humbly ask for your vote on November 6th, because we can't afford to take a step back to the failed economic policies of the past. We need to take a step forward.
Thank you very much. I'd like to close it. I just want to say in closing, I want to thank Oak Creek for hosting. I want to thank partisans on both sides. You were respectful, a little bit noisy, but that's fine. You're very enthusiastic. And I do want to thank the candidates on behalf of Wisconsin Eye, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and our sponsors. Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Now, reaction to the shooting at a Pittsburgh synagogue today. President Trump spoke out against anti-Semitism in his remarks at the Future Farmers